Hello there, all you amazing people. We are going to do another reaction video. They are slowly coming back. I say slowly because I mean slowly. I just came home from work. This is one of the videos, or well, I haven't seen this video, but this subject is a subject that makes me ashamed and kind of hide from saying I'm a Linux user. Because how to convince anyone to switch to Linux? It's really simple. This is not a religion, people. This is not a movement to save the killer whales of the world. You know, this is not how to, you know, it's not a movement on how to feed starving children in Africa. This is a pointless choice about an OS. And I mean pointless because if you care about security, privacy, and all that fucking shit, you should not be on YouTube. You should not even be on the internet. Switching from Windows or Mac to Linux from a privacy and data collection standpoint is like, let's say you have a bucket of 10,000 gallons of water, you take 1 gallon out of it. That's the amount this is going to help you. If you want to tinker, if you care about customizability, if you care about all the other things that Linux brings to the table, that's good. But here's the thing. You should not have to convince people to use your product or use a thing. If you have to convince people to use something, means you don't have a good product. What I mean by that is you should not, or we should not have to convince anyone to use Linux. They should just automatically come and use it on their own. They would do that if Linux makes sense for most people. It don't. There's no need to convert or convince anyone to use Linux. There's no need to convince anyone to use Mac or Windows. The second you go into it with that mindset, you go into it with a toxic mindset. You go into it with a limited, closed, narrow-minded mindset. You already made up your mind that Linux is the best. It's the place to be. We have all the cookies, all the cake, all the fucking chicks. That in mind, this is actually a good dude, by the way. I do like his content, but he do have some misses here and there. So let's go in and see what's going on here.
Fantastic platform with tons of benefits. Whether we're talking about better security or better privacy or better...
Okay, I will stop a lot. That's what I do here. When people say Linux has better security, show me the proof. It's that simple. There is no scientific proof or any evidence that say that Linux is more secure than any other OS. Can it be made more secure than Windows and Mac? Yes. Can Windows and Mac be made more secure than some Linux distros or Linux in general? Yes. It all depends on how we set it up. It is not. And I spent 20 plus years studying this shit. Everyone that makes a study into this, no matter if they are Linux fans or Mac fans or Windows fans or anything in between, they all come to the same conclusion that say it all is personal preference. It's all anecdotes.
Better performance. All of these things and more are available on Linux. But it's hard to convince people to use Linux.
Because you don't have a product that most people want. This is the thing. If it's hard, let's use the word convincing, like I said at the beginning. If it's hard to get people to use or migrate or move ideas over to what you want like them to do, that means that it's not good. You know, it's not a good place to be. It's not good for most people. Some maybe, not for most.
They kind of think that it's too difficult. But at the same time, there's a lot of value that makes it easy to use, more so than Windows, and, you know, all that sort of thing.
Wait, that makes no sense. They say it's too difficult, but there's also a lot of value that makes it more easy to use, in some cases better than Windows. Am I dyslexia just creeping up on me, or did that not make sense to anyone, or am I just massively wrong here?
Convincing someone to change to Linux can be kind of hard.
Okay, why do you want them to change to Linux? What if they don't want to? What if they're happy with it? This is, I get so winded. Again, I will stop a lot because this is a subject that really drives me nuts. You don't have to, okay? You don't have to convince anyone to use Linux. Linux should be doing that on its own. And here's the other thing. If you have to convince someone to use Linux, that's because they don't want to use Linux and you're forcing them to use Linux with whatever convincing you're doing. Convincing is basically a low-key way of forcing people to change their mind.
Because think about convincing someone to change their web browser. That's pretty hard.
Again, you should not convince anyone to change their web browser. You can give them data, you can give them suggestions. In the end, you let them do whatever they want. If they don't like the web browser you want them to use, fine.
And that's just an app on their system. Switching to Linux is changing their entire system. So it's going to be hard. But that's okay, because in this video, I'm going to explain my technique for getting people to try Linux. And
this sounds like someone is going to indoctrinate you into a cult or religious nut place. Let me tell you how to convert people into something they don't want to do.
it has worked many, many times. Hi, I'm Michael Tennell, and I've been a Linux user for many, many years. And I've convinced so many people to switch to Linux that I've just lost count over the years.
Same. Same. I've been convincing or showcasing, as I like to call it, Linux to users for close to 30 years now. And I never tried, well, I have tried this once in a while, but for the most part, I never used the word convincing, converting. All I did, I fixed computers for people and friends and family, and I have my Linux laptop with me. I let them play on it while I do my shit. And if they ask questions, I answer them. If they think it's neat, I answer them. If they're like frustrated out of the living shit of Windows and they're like, why is there nothing better? I tell them there is. They should come to you. You should not force them to you.
These people are friends, family, friends of friends, friends of family, and if you count this channel, you could maybe say thousands of people at this point. And the people I've switched come in all shapes and sizes and ages.
People I switch. If you took Linux, if we were not talking about Linux, but we were talking about a religion, if we were talking about a political party, if we were talking about an ideology, this would have been banned from YouTube.
And all that sort of stuff. In fact, I switched someone in their late 70s, and every time I asked him about it, he praises it to me. And I've never really had to troubleshoot anything for him. And here's the thing though. It turned out that his son is also a Linux user and had tried to switch him for years. But he used a technique that I don't think works very well, and actually almost never works. And I call that the neckbeard route, whereas I went with the pragmatist route. So let's talk about these. The neckbeard route is the attempt to convince someone through the technical merits of the platform using technical...
Yeah, that's never going to work because you're not talking to another technical person. I totally agree with this. 100% correct. You need to know who you're talking to. If you're not talking to a tech-savvy guy, don't sit and talk about the optimization in the kernel that you can do. Or HTOP that he says open there in the corner.
Explanations. If the person you are talking to is technical, then great.
Yep.
Totally do that. It's probably fine. But most people aren't technical.
Nope.
Therein lies the problem. The pragmatic route is explaining why it makes sense to the individual through simple overview points. These points would be different depending on the person you're talking to. I've switched people with better security, better protection against malware, better privacy, even control and customization, as well as...
All of these make sense if that's something a person value. And the better security is a fluke. Honestly, malware protection, a fluke. This is not scientifically proven. It's not proven in any way, shape, or form that Linux provides that. We are just in a situation with Linux right now that too few people use it. So we are kind of, security by obscurity, which got debugged in like the 1950s or 40s as a security measure or something like that. Better privacy. I talked about this in the beginning. You are not that much more private if you have a fucking Ethernet cable plugged up to the bottom of your computer and you're running around chasing e-thoughts on the fucking internet and giving away your credit card left, right, and center. And I don't care how many VPNs you're putting your little fucking tiny Ethernet cables through. They don't work in that way. They are just roadblocks. Privacy, yes, it's more private than Windows and Mac OS, but not much more because most of your private data is not being taken by the OS. Your car takes more privacy and telemetry data than Windows and Mac OS does. Your car, especially if you have a Tesla or something like that. Control, kind of agree with that one. Customization, agree with that one. Preserve hardware, agree with that one. But if you take the fourth, or you can't see it, let me zoom him out a little bit. Wank, 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 wank. There you go, buddy. If you take the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth point, that is such a limited amount of people. Such a limited amount of people that care about that. You can, what he basically is doing here, most people probably have been switched because of the better security, hardware protection, and privacy. He's scaring people into a system. He's using scare tactics here. What happens if Linux become 95% of the computer market? How many Linux users right now are using a virus protection? How many Linux users right now are using a firewall? Almost none. So that means that when or if Linux becomes super popular, we are fucking open, man. We are spreading our legs and just be like, hello, Johnny boy. I am open for business. Just ram that fuck up into me all day, man. This is the problem. He may talk about better security and better malware protection and better privacy, but he's probably not teaching them how to actually get that under Linux, because right now he thinks that Linux is more secure and malware protected because people just can't be asked fucking attacking it. And the few times it happens, it's not that fucking big attacks. If Anonymous wanted to attack Linux or something group like that, like they do with Windows, yeah, you are fucked, okay? If big organizations like that want to attack Linux and the way that Linux users are like, we don't need be protected because we can't impregnate anyone. Yeah, you are in for a fucking big awakening, like a massive awakening. Here's the thing, I say this all the time. If you're connected to the internet, I don't care what OS you're using, have a firewall. That's the basic fucking, that's like having a condom when you're fucking a girl you don't know, okay? It's protecting you kind of generally. If you are sharing, at this point in time, if you're sharing files between any other computers that's in your own local network, and you're a Linux user, antivirus. You may not get infected, but you can be person zero and infect your whole fucking company because you're sitting there with your dick in your hand, being, I'm secure on Linux, and then you take some hardware or software with your home, you mess with it, you download or run something, download a fucking bad Python library. What the fuck do I know? Yes, it may not. Your computer's fine. Then you take it to work, you run the app or the program you made, you now infect the fucking whole IT department. This has happened both on Windows and Mac OS and Linux, where people have infected other people because they're careless. So unless you're sitting at home and the only files that are getting in and out of your network is between you and your other porn computer you have over there, you're fine with no fucking antivirus. The second you're sharing files with someone else, be a good citizen, scan that fucking shit so you don't lose your job. Privacy, I already have talked about that. Linux is more private, and yeah, it is more private than Windows and Mac OS, but not much more. Also, why is it not? I'm using the wrong button.
You don't have to spend money on a new laptop. I can extend the life of this one by using Linux. And
so can I, by the way, by using Windows. I just installed Windows 10 on a 6th gen 4 gigabyte system at work. Not Windows 10, Windows 11. I have installed Windows 11 on a 5th gen Intel CPU with 3 gigs of RAM. How? If you need to ask that question, I feel sorry for you because it's super easy.
And all sorts of other ways. Now, the pragmatic approach works best for most people because I explain how it addresses their individual needs and ignore the stuff that they don't care about. Like,
look, again, this sounds like I'm targeting you personally to switch to an OS you may not even need to switch to. All the people he have switched to Linux, how many of them did he switch because they actually asked him for a better solution, or did he just push and push and push? That's what I want to know. Because if people come to him and say, you know what, I actually have a problem with Windows. I don't want it anymore. I don't like it. Cool. Go nuts with your Windows conversion or convincing. But I wonder how many people, like a crazy little vegan in a restaurant, how many people he have just nagged that all fucking year, or every time we talk to them, you're using that Windows thing, oh, your computer's getting a little bit slow, Linux will take care of that, you can now have 10,000 tabs open. Oh, it's still slow when you have 10,000 tabs open. Oh, that must be because Safari, Chrome is not really optimized for Linux, apparently. If he did the bad thing where he was convincing people that didn't need to convincing, again, had this not been Linux but a political movement, a religious belief, it would have been taken off YouTube.
I would never talk to them about systemd or Wayland versus X or which desktop environment necessarily. Now, I would eventually talk about the desktop environment, but more on the lines of which one do you like the experience of? What do you like the interface to be? And then I don't care about telling them what the name of the desktop is or anything like that until they start using it. And then you can...
This in of itself is a problem with Linux. If you want to use Windows, you don't have to fucking nurse them through 10,000 different desktops. The same with Mac OS. You get one. That's it. Not only is that super streamlined, not only does that mean way better support and easier and faster support, and it makes it easier for people that makes not hardware, software.
Teach them about that stuff because most people don't really care about that stuff. And it's better to start them off with stuff they do care about and then gradually get them into becoming fans of the platform.
I need something to drink, but this is like a fucking predator trying to get, hey, I have puppies in my van. Here's some candy. I'll be back tomorrow. And it's not beer, by the way, it's energy drink. If you think about this, if you take the word Linux, if you're talking about anything else, this sounds bad. Let me drink for him.
Also, there was the guy I convinced about the new laptop so he didn't have to buy one. 2 years later, he asked me for advice on what laptop to buy, so I asked him if he will want Linux on the new one. And he said, yeah, of course. He also said that while there are things that annoy him about Linux, there's about 100 times more things about Windows that he hates. So,
fair enough. That person, he did some good things for.
It wasn't like he became a huge fan. He just enjoyed the fact that he didn't have to deal with all the other stuff. So pros and cons. You're never going to get everyone to be an enthusiast, but you can get people to use it and enjoy it and appreciate using this new platform.
Have you ever thought, bear, think with me here, peeps. Have you ever thought that some of those people are just using Linux to make you happy? Could that be a thing? Could it be that you have tried to convince them so much that they're like, you are my tech guy. I'm switching to Linux just to shut your fucking mouth. Because I suspect there's a few of them out there. I'm sure he has a lot of people that are happy with Linux. There's a lot of people I know that would be happy with Linux. But until they come to me and say they want Linux, I'm not going to convert them. I'm not going to convince them. They don't need convincing. If they bitch and moan about Microsoft, if they don't ask for a solution, you don't give it to them. People, this is how you lose a relationship. If your spouse is shouting at you and blah, 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 yelling and screaming, they probably just need to ventilate. If they then ask for a help, that's when you help them. There's nothing more fucking stupid and irritating than you just sitting there and bitching about work or something like that to a friend or a spouse. And then they're like, well, let me, and then they try and give you advice for the next fucking 30 hours when all you wanted was just to ventilate because this is irritating me. I think a lot of the people he moved to Linux was because he found them in a vulnerable situation. They were tired of something with Windows or Mac or whatever they were using. And he was like, here's our Lord and Savior Linux, use it. And they were like, yeah, why not? But I think a lot of them, and this, again, when I talk to Windows users, Linux users, Mac users, old, new, past, in the process of migrating. And a lot of them moved back to Windows after a while. They moved back to Mac OS. And when I asked them why they do that, and that's because either people overpromised what Linux could do, or they did it to shut up some fucking Linux nutcase in their tech circle, or they just wanted to try it out, but it was not for them. But you hear a lot of people like, well, this dude was my tech guy in the family or tech girl, and they would not help me if I was not running Linux. And at some point I just gave in because Linux could do whatever I wanted to do, but I just didn't like it. So I wonder how many of the people he had converted was because he was sitting there and napping at them all the time. It could be a fun thing to know.
Because if you tailor it to what they care about, it's a lot easier to switch them. Now,
by the way, this is so fucking psychological manipulation that it's not even funny. Does he sit there and make a fucking strategy plan for each person he knows in his life on how he can convert them to Linux? That is borderline narcissistic toxicity, if you ask me. You don't do that. It's an OS, dude. Come on. This dude is an amazing dude. He makes good content. But goddamn, this video should not have been made. You are not trying to save the world from the Antichrist. You're trying to get people to use a fat penguin as their mascot and say fuck you to Microsoft and Apple and big businesses, which I kind of, is in alignment with why the fuck I use Linux also. But come on.
I'm not going to say that everyone will switch and like it. You will get somebody who is going to switch and then later on switch again back to Windows or to Mac or whatever. It's probably going to happen. And that's okay. As long as they give it a shot, a genuine try. I feel like...
what is your definition? What is your definition of a short and genuine try? What if I try it for a week and I don't like it? What if I try it for a month and I don't like it? What if I try it for 10 years and don't like it? What if I try it for 30 years and don't like it? What is it? Where does that go in? Are people like him the gatekeeper of when people put in the right amount of effort? No. Again, this is no more different than I like Lewis Hamilton's fucking Monster energy drinks. Should I now make a fucking 10-hour video about how I should convert all of you all to this magnificent beverage of the gods? No, I like it. It suits me, and I could go in there. It's more sturdy, and they don't put as many bad things in it as Red Bull does, and blah blah blah. And they are better environmentally company than Red Bull. Again, I don't know if this is a fact. By the way, I'm just spewing shit out right now. No, if you have to change people's mind, that's bad because you are not providing them with a good enough product. People don't choose Windows; they just use it, and if they are dissatisfied with it, you don't fucking I don't know if he's married, but you don't, get unmarried or divorced every time you have an argument with your wife, or if she does something you don't like, or your boyfriend or whoever you're married to. People bitch and moan about their systems. People bitch and moan about work. That don't mean that you have to sneak in like a fucking cocksucker and let me tell you about Linux. No, just leave them be, dude. You don't have to, because if they start to bitch and moan and they ask you for advice, that's when you go in with your sneaky little thing. Or if they bitch and moan and they're like, I can't work like like this. I can't fucking do anything. I wish there was something better. Then you're sneaking in. Just because I bitch and moan about Windows Update all fucking day at work. I bitch and moan about so much shit about Windows. But I'm not going installing Linux on all fucking computers because it makes no sense. Everyone uses Windows down there. Everyone likes Windows. They bitch and moan once in a while. I don't sit and wait for my boss to be like, God damn it, Windows, whatever, and like Linux. No, I'm just like, yeah, he's just this little thing irritates him. I despise this kind of thing so much, man.
As long as they know what it is and experience it and can say the pros and cons of what they like and what they don't like, that's okay. It's all about preference. Not every person is going to...
If it's about preference, you should not have to convince them. You cannot sit there and say it's all about preference if you like or dislike Linux. Because if it was, you didn't felt the need to convince people to Linux because you will just sit on your ass, do your tech shit, and when people wanted to switch, they will come to you. No, those are the only people you deal with. Here's, I will say this again. You don't have to convince people because then it's not a choice anymore. You are influencing them. Convincing means getting people to do something they normally would not do. That is manipulation. That is forcing your opinion onto them to some degree. Again, why should I, what is marketing? Convincing you to buy this thing. That's why universal people don't like marketing that much, because they are doing everything to manipulate you into buying or using a certain thing. Marketing is great for the pocket, for the wallet, but I don't think you will find any consumer out there say, oh, I like being bombarded with fucking manipulated brainwashing marketing every fucking day. Marketing is just another way of convincing people to use a thing they want you to. I would have loved him to make a video where he said, I'm not trying to convert, I'm not trying to convince, I'm not trying to make anyone use Linux unless they come to me and ask for it. But that will not be that good, because then, the numbers and this and that. The second you have to forcibly manipulate or convince someone to do something means you're doing something they normally would not do or against their will. How do I convince my children to eat their vegetables? How do I convince my spouse to watch this video or movie, go to the movie with me? How do I convince my spouse to buy this car? All of those mean that we want them to do something or get someone to do something they normally would not do or they don't want to do.
Like Linux, not everybody's going to like Windows, and not everyone is going to like Mac OS.
True.
It's all about preference, right? And one of the cool things about
then
Linux...
you don't have to convince anyone. Here's the thing. If you're trying to convince people to do something they don't normally want to do, you're not a nice guy. You're manipulating them.
Is that you have so much customization and control. Preference is a huge thing for us, right? So if...
No. If preference and control was a big thing for us, most people will not be using 90% of all the shit we are using today. We will not be using phones, we will not be using smartphones, we will not be using tablets, we will not be using even Linux, because even Linux limits your fucking control and preference. I can't game some games I want on Linux. That's a preference that's getting removed from me. I can't use some peripherals on the Linux I want to use. That's a preference getting removed from me.
If they do prefer something else, that's okay too. Now, during the conversation with the person you are trying to switch, find out how they use their computer. Do they go on websites and...
This is like you're fucking in an interrogation room with two cops and they're trying to convince you of a murder you didn't do. How is this not bad? Have you ever been in a relationship where someone always wanted you to do what they wanted? How did they do that? By using all of these techniques. They would, of course, not talk about privacy and security, but they would approach it the same way that he's doing here. Why? Because they were trying to convince you to do something they want you to do. They were manipulating you.
And just watch YouTube videos and Netflix and that sort of stuff, or do like basic...
By the way, I like that we're talking about Linux and he's using a MacBook with, or this stock footage is a MacBook with Mac OS on it. If you needed a stock footage of someone using a computer, record yourself using a Linux machine with your fucking phone, okay?
And just watch YouTube videos and Netflix and that sort of stuff, or do like basic things like, websites, email, and nothing super intensive for the computer. And it's really easy to convince those people because the Linux can do all of that. Or
True.
Maybe they play video games. And if they do, find out which games they play, because some are going to be compatible with Linux and some are not.
All of this work you have to do to get someone over to an OS. Here's the thing. I'm guessing here. But I think that the person he gets to use, or the people get to use Linux, it means way more to him that they are doing it than it do for them, because they just don't give a fuck. In the end, nobody gives a fuck about what OS we're using, and they are not running around and telling the world about how they've been converted from the evil Windows. He's doing this for himself, or else he would just let people come to him. Like I said, what I used to do back in the day when I did a lot of computing work, every time I worked on someone's computer, like, hey, do you need to do something on the internet or something like that? Here's my laptop. Use my laptop while I'm working on your computer, and it will be a Linux laptop. Every time I used to hold parties and shit like that, my DJ computer or party computer, what you will call it, was a Linux machine. So people are using Linux without knowing it. And some will be like, that's fucking cool. That's neat. What are you using? I'm using Linux. Oh, tell me more about it, idiot. That's how you go about it. You put it out there. You let people use it, access it. You don't want to convince them, because the people that really, really want to use it will come to you. Like I said, he is more excited about all the people that he's got to Linux than the people that are using Linux right now.
If they are, then great. You can switch them over. If not, well, there's that. So also you can find out...
There is that. Oh, you can't use the thing I'm trying to convince you to. God darn it. Well, there's that. I don't even know how to unpack this, because maybe Linux is not as great as you think then. Why do we need to have an attack vector plan for fucking gamers?
What apps they use, and make sure they're compatible with Linux before you have them try, going through the process of using Linux. Basically,
good idea. If someone wants to use Linux and they're like, yeah, I really want to use Linux, make sure their life is compatible with Linux. Makes sense. I get it. I understand you. I'm with you on that. But don't use it as a strategy. Like, don't sneak into your fucking friend's house and download his fucking browser history. Look at his Steam library and see what games he played the most 6 months. And then go to his work and sneak into his office to see what fucking office programs he's using. For them to make a strategy plan on how to convert him or convince him to use Linux. Again, had we talked about anything other than Linux right now, this video is borderline getting fucking removed from Windows, from YouTube for being a propaganda piece.
Just find out what the pain points are that they have with Windows. Show them how Linux
let me try and introduce pain points that you have with Linux. Again, like I said before, just because someone bitch and moan don't mean that it's that big of a different issue. They just need to ventilate. And you're looking at, I can, poke away of that little issue so I can get them to use something they normally would not want to do. You're manipulating them.
Help and be specific towards what they need. And I bet you, I can't guarantee you, because, I don't know what everyone thinks, but I'm very confident with this approach, you're going to be able to switch a lot of people. Now, it is important to...
Hey, we want more people to run around with those boomy things around their fucking torso. And then you can use exactly everything he said right here as a guideline. Just take out Linux and put in the people that run around with the booms around their torsos. Who use these statistics? Oh, not statistics, tactics. Bad people, okay? I'm sorry to say it. He's a nice guy. I watched a lot of his content. He's a really nice guy. But this here is manipulation of other people. He do it because he thinks he's doing good. So did Saddam Hussein. So did a lot of dictators. Have you ever heard, let me put it another way. When you talk, most dictators, when they talk, they actually think they fucking doing good things. Yeah, I need to be this way for my country and my people. I am the best one for my country and my people. Linux, I keep saying this, Linux users are some of the most delusional people I've ever met besides vegans.
To note that you should start them off slowly, like with a virtual machine or a USB drive.
Oh yeah, let's get my grandmother to use a fucking virtual machine. You just talked about difference between tech people, non-tech people, and you're like, let's ease them in with a virtual machine. The comedy writes itself.
For example. In fact, you may even want to start them off by switching their apps to stuff that works on Linux if they have Windows-only stuff. So when the time comes to switch to Linux,
manipulation,
the process is much easier. And there's a lot of the times the software is better anyway, so there's that.
No. Perfect example, LibreOffice is a piece of fucking shit. But compared to Microsoft Office, it's a piece of fucking shit. I had to use LibreOffice last week because I didn't have a fucking license at work for Microsoft Office because they didn't buy it for me. Yes, It cost money. And I used LibreOffice. It was awful. The UI was awful. It took 10 times longer. And it every time I saved a fucking document, like, oh, are you really sure you want to use the Office format? Yeah, everyone else is using Microsoft Office. I'm going to go into like a whole UI, UIX rant. If you want to see that in a video, let me know.
If you really want to help someone switch to Linux, then don't just hand them a USB drive and walk away, or link them to an ISO and leave the chat.
I wish this would be so to speak.
If you really actually want them to switch and you want them to have a good experience, provide some guidance. Now, if you want to kind of ease them into the waters and let them dip their toes in, and you want to share them a video about getting started with Linux and how to...
So that's how, you get into the mafia, They make you do crazy little fucking shit or organized crime. You do little small things here and there until, they know they have their fucking fingers around you and you are locked in. And then they go full-blown ham. Again, had this been anything other than Linux we were talking about, this video would be borderline taken down from YouTube.
To pick their first distro? Well, it just so happens that I made one of those, so...
Actually, this is actually a good video he made up there, but you get the point here. You probably have noticed that this is really irritating to me. If you have to convince, convert, aka manipulate and force people into using or doing something, that means that the world is not ready, they are not ready, and or the product that you're trying them to, or the thing that you're trying them to get into is not that good. Let's take Scientology. If it really was as good as all those fucking people say, or not all, but those few people say it is that's trying to convert the world would already be Scientologists, or what the fuck it's called. If Linux was the best OS on earth, if Linux really was the most secure OS on earth, every fucking intelligent agency on earth would use nothing but Linux. They don't. You know what NASA and NSA and all those use Linux for? Do you think it's for the accountant department? No, it's for the fucking servers, okay? That's what they're using them for. Like, people have such a misconception about that. They see like, oh, this organization use Linux. Yeah, they do. But it's not like the fucking CEOs are sitting on their Linux machine and writing the new latest fucking quarterly report. Linux is being used for what it's super good at, back-end shit. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the case. NASA use Linux? Of course they do. Yeah, they also use Windows and Mac. They probably have like an old Atari, whatever fucking the first personal computer was called, in a basement somewhere running a fucking, I don't know, robot dildo or something like that. Of course they do. The fact you have to make a video, this video could have been called this: how to manipulate people into doing something you want them to do. Or how to manipulate people 101. How to forcefully push your wants and needs agenda onto other people 101. I never in my life have trusted anyone that uses the word let me switch you, let me convert you, let me convince you. I get it if you're at a trade show, if it's a salesperson, that's their job. Their job is trying to convince you of using a product. But you know what they are doing. You know that if a fucking idiot with a suit comes in with a bag of these and are trying to tell you about how good they are, you know that they are trying to convince you to use their product. He is disguising being a nice IT dude. He's disguising this toxicity behind being a nice guy, when in reality, what he talked about right here, if your spouse did that to you in a relationship, you'll be running away. If your co-workers and your bosses did these things to you all the time, you'll be running away. If every time you go to the shop, there will be people standing left, right, and center trying to convince you to do X, Y, and Z, use this fucking bicycle, use this car, you'll be running away. If Linux cannot convince people to use it without us forcing them or manipulating them to do so, Linux is not a good enough product. It's that simple. It's that fucking simple. All of these videos is telling me is that Linux users love to manipulate other people, and Linux is not good enough of a product, because if it was, we didn't need to convince them. See you all later. Bye bye.